I know Philadelphia had a dominant 2 playoff games, but it was against 2 teams. I mean, the Giants were clearly outmatched, and the San Francisco obviously did not play with a quarterback. And Jalen Hurts, he's been pretty open about not being 100%, and he hasn't looked great.
Welcome to another episode of the Football Analytics Show. My name is Ed Fang, your host, and on this episode, I'm thrilled to have Hitman on. He is a professional bettor that specializes in the NFL. Among other topics, we talk about his path to becoming a pro bettor and how he has evolved in that process. Hitman also tells us about his process for betting NFL sides, totals, and then, of course, heading into the Super Bowl player props. And we also talk about Super Bowl bets that he likes. The Football Analytics Show is brought to you by patrons of the podcast. For as little as $5 per month, you can support this show. You will also get access to a patron-only episode every month. Right now, there is a 30-minute audio episode that evolved out of my research about how to predict interceptions. I'll be talking about this more on the podcast next week, but if you really want to get the full story, you should check out this episode. If you'd like to support the Football Analytics Show as a patron, you can do that on Patreon. Go to the URL patreon.com/footballanalytics. Patreon is Patreon. Football Analytics is all one word. Once again, to support the podcast on Patreon, go to patreon.com/footballanalytics. Joining me on this episode of the Football Analytics Show is Hitman. He is a professional sports bettor. He also provides content for the Hammer Network, and he also works with Pregame as well. Hitman, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be on. Been a long time admirer of your work. I know you have very respected in this industry, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. Hitman, I really want to get into your story. How did you first start getting into sports betting and then your journey to becoming a professional?
Got you. So I first started placing bets, probably it's been about 10 years ago now. And I was always known as the guy in school that anything related to football, Tom knew everything. Any stat, Tom knows everything. Tom can name the players on the rosters from probably up to 40 or something of the players. But I never really did anything. That was just out of me being a big fan, and I just love the NFL. And finally, in 2013 or so, it's funny, my fiance's uncle was involved with a site, a betting site, a bookie, and he was like, "Hey, I could get you a bookie if you want to bet on sports and everything." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do this." And I thought to myself, I was telling him, I was like, "Oh yeah, I know everything about football. I'll do great at this." Blah blah blah. And the first year they bet me, they were like, "Nobody wins betting." They're like, "We have 20 guys that go through here. Everybody loses for the year." And I was like, "I'm going to prove you guys wrong. I know every player, all that." And I knew nothing about handicapping, really. I just knew matchup players, I think this team has a good matchup. So I was kind of lucky in the year one, but I did well. I was betting $30 units, and I made something like $1,200 for the year. And I thought I was just amazing. I was like, "Oh my God, I made $1,200. I saved the $1,200. I was like, I'm not spending it," all that. So they were like, "All right, double or nothing for the next year." And then for the second year, I started to get a little more into it, where I was trying to listen to more podcasts. And I always had a good eye for telling or being able to differentiate what that's out there in the betting space. And, there's a lot out there with scams and guys that are preaching stuff that just isn't winning stuff. And I was able to do a good job of differentiating just some stuff where it could be simple stuff. People saying, "Oh, play props," or we'll look for stale lines after an injury or something like that. And the second year where I had this just one account, I made something like $10,000. And I remember the week before the Super Bowl, I got a call and he said to me, he was like, I hate to do this. You're the first person we ever did this to, but you're getting kicked off this account.
Wow.
So that was my first 2 years of betting. And when that happened, I had no idea. I was like, what do I do? I was like, what do I make an offshore account? I actually ended up making a Five Dimes at that point when Five Dimes Tony was around. And I took my talents to there. And then finally, over the next few years, got more accounts and all that. And so that's kind of how it started. And I just progressively, like year by year, started putting more work in, I started posting pics on the pregame forums, and I started to get a little bit of notoriety on there where I would put in like paragraphs of analysis with matchups saying, I think that this number two corner has a bad matchup against this number one receiver, all that stuff. And started to get some attention from that and just started gradually building more outs and and all that. And year by year, I was doing better. I was obviously you're going to do better when you have more outs, you have more markets to attack, you're making more connections. People start reaching out to, I start reaching out to people about, hey, you want to trade information, all that. And then finally, like I was a school teacher and, like one year it's like, oh, I made half my salary betting. Like I did pretty well this year. And then it's like, oh, wow, I made my whole salary. And then it's like, finally you're like, what the hell am I doing still teaching? Like I'm making more betting. And if I do this full time, I feel like I could make even more. And it kind of coincided with legalization happening. Legalization for me, I live in New Jersey. That was huge because when that happened, it gave me so many more outs and it was so many more options. I've always been a better prop better than I was a side better and all that. So it really just kept kind of gradually happening. And I got an offer to sell picks and that happened. And I started getting more notoriety, working with more and more people. And then we kind of just got to the point where we are now, where each year I feel like I get more connections and I get more invested into this.
That's excellent. Actually, so your real name's Tom. Should I refer to you as Tom or Hitman for the rest of the show?
We'll do Hitman.
All right. Yeah, I feel like that's
kind of
what
my alter ego now. You know.
No, because I was actually kind of. I probably should have asked you before the show what your real name was, but we'll go with Hitman here. But I appreciate the Do you ever refer to yourself as Tom on podcast?
No, it's always Hitman. I started out with a name. It was my initials. It was my name. Like when I posted on forums, it was TH the Man. It was so stupid. I made that like screen name on like AIM back when I was younger, and it just always stuck. It was like TH the Man, and then
right.
everyone said they were like, I can't even understand this because the letters were all together. It was like TH, THE, MAN, and they're like, you got to come up with something different. And then somebody came up, they're like, I'm just going to call you Hitman. And it kind of stuck. And I'm also a big wrestling fan. So I kind of like the Hitman, Bret Hitman Hart. So it kind of stuck with me.
That's awesome. So Hitman, as you were coming up, give me a sense for, how, like, was it more important, do you feel like, to get better as a bettor, or was it more like the connections and getting accounts, maybe some betting partners? What was kind of the relative importance there?
Yeah, when I started, it was all about getting better as a handicapper. And the reason is because when you're first starting, you never realize what a grind it's going to be to like keep outs and keep making money, So it's like for the first few years when you're only betting like a few $100s a game, props and all that, you're really not dealing with like limits getting
Right.
thrown out of many places. Like you'll get thrown out after killing places on $100 bets, but it takes a lot longer. It can last you maybe a full season,
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my focus was initially, was the handicapping aspect of it. And it's funny because I feel like year by year I become a better bettor, and better at making money and making connections, but a worse handicapper. And the reason for that is because year after year, it just becomes harder to maintain outs. Your bankroll gets bigger, so you want to bet bigger. So more of your priority starts to go towards actually getting the money down. And when so
Right.
much of your priority is towards getting the money down, you can't handicap the hours that I used to. Like when I first started, I would be doing write ups that were paragraphs. And it's because I had the time, because, getting my bet down, log into one account, bet $100 or something, and then I could focus on my write up. But now it's like, all right, you got to hit up, you got to go to these 10 different accounts, and you got to
Right.
contact these people to help get you down. And it's a whole thing. So I feel like as the years keep progressing, my handicapping, I still think very highly of my own handicapping. I'm still think I'm one of the better people out there at it, but I feel like there's less and less time for that work compared to actually being a better and making connections, getting new partners, getting new outs, and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know with like my betting and the stuff that I send out to members of my site, it helps me to kind of put the story together, write a couple paragraphs. This is why I like the particular game. And then I feel really confident about making the bet then, right? And it sounds like there's just not time for that anymore for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I was giving out picks for free on forums, like I said, I would have paragraphs, and now when I give out picks on my service, there's no write up really ever. I just tell
Right.
people I really don't have the time for it, and if just you kind of just gotta trust me. And it's the same. It's the same with like betting. Like most betting partners, they never ask you like, why do you like this? Because if they know that you're a winner, they're just
Sure.
like, give me the pick. We'll help get down. We know you're a winner. But if even with them, it's like if they do ask, it's usually a sentence. Yeah, I think the market is low for this reason, and then it's just getting the bets in.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hitman, I wasn't in New Jersey when things first started legalizing. We are now in, a legalized world where it's very difficult to not get limited if you are winning. So give me a sense for, I presume it was like a DraftKings account in the very early, or a FanDuel, because, I think they were the biggest ones that were in first. And I mean, was it just so much better back then?
Yeah, I mean, when it first started, I felt like these places had a lot longer of a leash when they were, and because one of the things is these sports books were new to everything, also, so they maybe thought that they could be a little more aggressive with their risk tolerance in the beginning, and it was kind of a stunner because when legalization happened, I was betting on a lot of paper heads, and I still am. And I was used to getting thrown off from some paper heads and all that. But with like legalization, I was like, oh well, FanDuel, DraftKings, these are billion-dollar companies or whatever they're valued at. I was like, oh, they got to be willing to take action. And it became apparent in the beginning. It was pretty good, but then it started to become apparent after maybe a few months and everything, like, oh wow, they're really starting to back off. So it was definitely, and that's kind of when I finally started to like consider myself a pro. Like, I'm making a lot of money from this,
Right.
and this is really what I'm going to do full time. So I mean, it's kind of scary when that's happening, because obviously when you're dependent on the money, it's like, well, how am I going to continue to get down? And that's when you start to get into the beard game and all of that stuff, and going in person. I have felt that going in person to a lot of these places has worked a lot better than the apps. And the thing is about going in person is a lot of people talk about how like, oh, I'm thrown out of this sports book and everything. I think there's a way to approach it. If you go to these sports books, there's ways to make yourself last a lot longer and stay under the radar. Whether in the beginning it was the kiosk betting, and they've started to crack down on the kiosks a little bit now. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, I could go to the kiosk and I could bet 7 times $200, and then you got 1,400 down. Or a player's card requires X, so we're going to bet Z, and to just try to stay under the radar. So Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what. It was definitely when legalization first started. It was easier than it is now. I feel like now these places are really starting to get aggressive, especially with the props, because there's so many good prop services out there and winning prop bettors and everything. I feel like nowadays they're getting really aggressive with not taking bets.
Right, exactly. I mean, I remember when the first Bet Bash happened. Maybe it was maybe it was 2021, that August.
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, excellent. Um, I remember like FanDuel sponsored that, and Spanky would talk about, I think he tweeted out that FanDuel gives me decent limits. I'm pretty sure that's not the case anymore, right? And so that's only a short 2 years ago. I just feel like things are changing and kind of changing for the worse. So, I mean,
FanDuel will. The thing about FanDuel is they'll back you off, but they will still keep it for the most part. Not all the time, but for the most part, they'll give a respectable limit where, it's worth keeping the account open. Am I going to get rich off this? No, but it's not slap in the face bad. And I've said that on other podcasts I've done. I don't have a problem with the limiting. You know what? If that's your model and you don't hire the talent to work and risk and to originate markets and all that, and you're just gonna say I'm gonna limit people, you know what? That's fine. But it's like the bet MGM where it's like $7. Like
right.
that's just egregious, Like FanDuel, I've had a FanDuel for 5 years and I still use my personal account because it's not what I want, but still semi respectable where I'll bet on it every now and then. But obviously, places like BetMGM, I haven't used their account in years. And that's kind of what when I'm on Twitter and I'm always complaining about how books are treating bettors and everything, it's really just to stop with the egregious stuff. And you know what? If I said it in the Washington Post article, and this is a quote from Bill Krakenberger once said this, and I stole it from him. He was like, "There's women in Atlantic City booking out of their bra, and they're giving you $100, $200 on a prop on their paperhead site. Like, how could MGM not give you $100? So
Yeah.
that's kind of been my mindset on the whole thing.
I mean, I found MGM to be particularly egregious. But yeah, no, I mean, actually, I'll link to that Washington Post article because it was particularly good. But do you think things will get better for the legalized market?
I've been seeing it get worse. I have betting partners that they'll open up a new account, and I'm giving them some recommendations on what I like and everything, and they're not. I've had accounts that like they've been backed off. They'll lose $2,000 in 1 week, and they'll get backed off and limited to $80 the next
Right.
week. And it's obviously because their algorithms are telling them, well, I don't care that you lost, but you got the best of the number on all these props, and you got the best.
Yeah.
You bet Dallas -1, they closed -3, and all that. So
Right.
it's honestly it's been getting a lot worse, and
Right.
it's something that I've been seeing with a lot of pick services as well. Like they're giving out stuff on some of these domestic accounts like props, and or like Right Angle Sports will give out a college basketball total, and these domestics are they're pulling the game in 3 seconds, and then they're limiting the account win or lose because you're automatically going to get 2.5 points of closing line value. And it's the
Right.
same with other sharp prop services. And it scares me about the future of my service, to be honest. If I want to continue to deal with that, I'm starting to get some market respect and the lines are moving. And it does make me wonder about the future of betting, of giving out picks, of any
Yeah.
of that stuff with the domestic sites. It's definitely concerning, and I feel like it's been getting worse and worse.
Yeah. Hitman, you did mention I've put a bunch of your bets into my newsletter from your appearances on Matt Landis's Props and Hops, and it's been a very profitable season. So before I forget, I want to thank you for that.
No worries. Always happy to. I'm happy to be in it. Makes me feel special to see that something that I said was could be meaningful towards some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, man, I want to ask you a little bit more about how you handicap sides and totals first. Maybe give us a sense for your process and whether analytics plays a role in looking at sides and totals.
So I'm a lot matchup based. I'm a lot anticipating line movement and being able to read markets. And I'm a lot of following the news religiously and knowing these teams, knowing the injury reports, knowing the beat writers who I'm going to follow that is giving out injury information earlier, all stuff that affects the markets. With a lot of like analytics, I don't have a model. I do work with guys that have a model and they're a lot smarter than me, and they'll tell me certain things. We'll bounce ideas off each other. We'll work together. But yeah, a lot of what I do is it's kind of like the old school way of handicapping. That like a lot of old school guys before there were all these models and everything, they were basing it off what I just said: matchups, information, having connections through your networking. I'll give you an example. I bet very big, and I gave out at the same exact time Dallas -1 against the Eagles this year when Dallas was home, and the under in that game. And just maybe coincidentally, 3 hours later, the Schefter report came out that Jalen Hurts was out for
The shoulder injury,
I'm not going to say if I knew anything or whatever. Maybe it was just a coincidence that I gave out the under and I gave out Dallas at the same exact time. But I feel like it's kind of a bulletproof model. Like your model could be wrong. Like, and if the model's wrong, it's going to cost you a lot of money before you figure out that there's inefficiencies in a model. But the one thing that I feel like has always stood the test of time is information, being able to read the market, saying, oh, Circa is moving off this. Why do I think Circa moved? And now DraftKings, FanDuel, all the paperheads, they still haven't moved. Matchups, it's kind of a week-to-week thing with matchups, cluster injuries, beat writers, all that stuff. And just working with other handicappers that win, and seeing it, on a Monday saying, hey, I think this line's a little bit short. What does your model say, or what are you thinking? And they're saying, yeah, I'm coming up short also. And it's kind of like you could blend two things together: the modeler with the grinder, which is what I consider myself to be, a grinder. So that's kind of my handicapping style, and I feel like it's kind of stood the test of time for years. That's been an effective method. And like I said, I'm far from a genius. I was a simple school teacher before this. So, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start with a lot of modeling, but I'm fortunate that I've made some good connections with people that can do that. And I've had my way with handicapping, and it's done me pretty well. At least, the results have been good, but also my closing line value has always been very good. And that's something that I've tracked. And I'm more of a Monday, Tuesday bettor. And I'm not betting much closer to post on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, unless it's Friday with injury reports and all that. But Monday, there's old sayings like Spanky will always say, like, oh, nobody beats the NFL, at least for sides and totals. I completely disagree with that. Nobody beats the NFL at post. I can agree with that.
Right.
But on Monday, Tuesday, you could get the best of it. And, the limits, like you could easily you're not going to maybe get down 6 figures on Monday NFL, but you're going to get down good 5 figures on Monday NFL. So I feel like the market is beatable on those days, and on maybe Fridays when you react to injury information. So that's kind of been the way that I like to attack the NFL markets.
Excellent. So Hitman, you talked about information. How do you decide what information is important? Like, clearly, if a quarterback is hurt, okay, it's important, right? But like maybe another example, right? Thinking back to the last 2 games for the Cincinnati Bengals, and their offensive line, those 3 backups looked really good in Buffalo, and not so good the next week in Kansas City. So that we had information that they were their backups, that maybe a matchup that Buffalo could have exploited. It didn't happen. How do you decide whether that's important? Maybe that's a good example. Maybe it's not. But like, in your career of doing this, how do you decide which information is important?
Well, it's the information that the market isn't fully accounting for. Now, I mean, if let's say theoretically, if I was to like Buffalo in that game, those offensive linemen, I remember Jonah Williams got hurt in the Baltimore game in the wild card weekend. And on Monday, I believe the line was pretty much a consensus four across the board. And if you happen to like Buffalo in that game, which I didn't, I liked Cincinnati closer to post, which was one of my rare games that I bet closer to post because I knew that the line was probably going to move towards towards Cincinnati because that narrative was going to get out there about the offensive lineman. And then finally, the reports come out Monday, Jonah Williams dislocated kneecap. Alex Kappa is probably going to be out. Lyle Collins is going to be out. And you can kind of anticipate, you know what, if you like Buffalo, you kind of got to go now because that narrative is going to get out there. And the Bengals are probably going to get bet against. And it's like the thing when they played the next week and the lines opened, it's fully accounted for in the market. It's been a week since the injuries have happened. It's accounted for. So for me, it's just trying to get to stuff before the lines fully account for it is the way that I'll approach it. Like, again, like if a team has cluster offensive line injuries and you can get those practice reports on Friday and you could get an indication from a beat writer, these three linemen aren't practicing, probably not looking good for this week. You can kind of get a jump before even 2 hours later after that beat writer says that, the official injury report's going to come out. Those guys are going to get ruled out and the line's going to move. You could kind of get beat to that information and get beat to that game before the line's going to move. So for me, it's all about attacking the information that you think the market isn't accounting for. If the market's accounting for it, then if anything, you're looking to play against it. Just like that Bengals game where I thought that the market was over accounting for the offensive line injuries closer to post. So it was a rare game that I bet Cincinnati at post. So yeah, it's all about just with the information is just being able to try to put a value on it, on what you think it's worth to the line and where do you think the line's going to go.
Right. So it's all relative to the market, right? And I think you probably got the best of the number because I think Buffalo closed -5, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was like split between 5.5 and still some
did it get that
sixes
high?
out there. But
Okay.
you know what? I could be wrong because once like it's 2 hours until post, I'm just going crazy on props where I'm not even looking at the spreads anymore,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that.
Yeah. We have a Super Bowl, Philadelphia versus Kansas City. Markets have moved pretty strong to Philadelphia. They look like they're 1.5 point favorite across the board as we are talking on Wednesday. I guess we still got 10 days before the game. Any opinion on the side or the total in this game?
I bet Kansas City. Now, for my betting portfolio, I'm very fortunate that I live near Philadelphia, and there is some biased Philadelphia sports books that they know they're going to get a lot of exposure on the Eagles, and they were offering some very good prices. Like, I mean, you might not even believe me, but in my personal betting portfolio, which is again different from a service and everything, I have in pocket Chiefs +3 -110, Chiefs +3.5 -140, and Chiefs +4.5 -150. And I was able to take advantage of, there are some local books around here that they know they're going to be exposed on this game. And I think as we're doing this as of Wednesday night, they still have Chiefs +3 and Chiefs +135, believe it or not, on the money line.
Wow.
So I'm sure if any other pros are listening to this, they're going to start hounding all their Philadelphia located sports books and everything. So but the Chiefs were the side I was looking towards anyway. I like the Chiefs when they were in the +2-ish range. I bet the Chiefs, or I would have bet the Chiefs at that number if I didn't have better options. It would have been a bet. For me, the Chiefs, have been the higher power rated team the whole year, essentially. For me, I mean, they were the market favorite. Like no, like market power ratings had them higher for this whole time. I know Philadelphia had a dominant two playoff games, but it was against two teams. I mean, the Giants
Right.
were clearly outmatched, and the San Francisco obviously did not play with a quarterback. And Jalen Hurts he's been pretty open about not being 100%, and he hasn't looked great. Now, fortunately for him, he didn't have to do much in these games. But against Kansas City, you're probably going to have to put up more of an effort than he did in the last 2 weeks. And, it's funny, like with the Chiefs, nothing has really happened to downgrade them that much. I mean, they essentially, it was a 50-50 game with the spread against Jacksonville. And that was a game where everything went wrong, where Mahomes was playing on one leg and missed a quarter of that game. And the Bengals game, I mean, the line closed 2.5, and it was a Cincinnati win by 3. So they really met expectation in that game. And Mahomes obviously has 2 weeks to get healthier. Obviously, you have the wide receiver issues with Kansas City right now, but I felt like Kansas City, without those wide receiver issues, I was anticipating that they were going to be a 1-2 point favorite. And I know Circa did open them as a 2.5 point favorite with some pretty high limits originally. So for me, I mean, I just thought that I made this game closer to pick 'em Kansas City -1. So even at the Kansas City at the underdog prices right now, I like it. But again, it's nothing that I recommend people going crazy on. Because at the end of the day, it's a Super Bowl side with unlimited liquidity. Like there's 1,000 bigger edges to be had in the Super
Right.
Bowl than the Super
Yeah.
Bowl side, So that's
Absolutely.
kind of where I stand on it. I'll be pulling for Kansas City, but it's nothing that I recommend going crazy on.
Yeah, my numbers have Kansas City as a small favorite. So after the AFC Championship game, I immediately went in. I was like, oh, I can get Kansas City -102 on the money line. And so I bet it and had the market move against me immediately. So it's been the second week in a row that I've bet Kansas City money line and had the market move against me immediately. Of course, against Cincinnati, the market eventually did come back and I did get some closing line value. I kind of think I'm going to get closing line value again here. I do think Kansas City is going to close as a favorite. What do you think about that?
I anticipate that also, but a lot of it depends on the wide receiver injuries. If Juju Smith-Schuster, Hardman, and Tony all get ruled out, then they're not going to close as the favorite. But I would expect, like, just trying, I don't have information, but just reading like the tea leaves and everything, I'd probably say the over under on how many of those guys play is over 1.5, and the over is juiced right now. So
Right.
gun the head, I think two of those guys play. And if that does happen, wouldn't be stunned if Kansas City closes -1, maybe.
Right. Yep. Exactly. All right, hey man, let's move on to you mentioned that there's probably other places with value on the Super Bowl, so let's maybe move on to that and talk about player props. This is something that you're very good at, and maybe give us a sense for your process for evaluating NFL player prop bets.
Yeah, it's matchup based, usage trends. I was always very into fantasy football, and I've been very good at fantasy football, and it kind of correlates fantasy football into player props.
Yep.
Getting a lot of outs to hit lines is especially important with the player props. You're just going to be able to get so many great opportunities where theoretically you could middle games, but for me, I'm not really looking to ever middle props because there's just not enough liquidity in it where I'm just like, I got to find the right side to this and I'm going to bet the right side. Unless obviously if both sides have value, then I would middle it. But yeah, also working with other sharp guys, other sharp prop guys, that's helped me. And as I said earlier, I've I've gotten worse as a handicapper, and I've gotten better at getting down and better at getting the bets in. So, the thing with props is it's the ultimate grind to get down what you want to get down on them. It's one shop is taking 300, another shop's taking 200. You got to text people. You got to go to so many different shops, hit your prop builders on your paperhead software and everything. It's really a long process to get down. But yeah, as far as like handicapping the props, it's a lot of matchups based, the usage trends, and reading the beat writers, reading stuff on that other sharp people have to say, especially in the fantasy community. You could find a lot of guys that kind of will do the work for you as far as like, hey, they have great columns on like this receiver has great matchups against this specific style of defense, all that type of stuff. So there's not like one thing that I do as far as handicapping it, but it's just a long list of a few things that I look to do when I'm trying to figure out what I think a number should be when reviewing the prop lines.
So it seems like it's also information based, kind of the way that you think about spreads and totals.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that. Like as far as like getting information, you mean as far as like getting information like injury
Well,
information or something, or
no, I mean just like different information, right? So if you're looking at what fantasy guys like an Evan Silva
yeah,
are
yeah.
saying, that's a certain set of information that you're using to help you get to the right number.
Exactly. Yep. What do other people in the market like? That's information that you could say somebody in the market could like a player over 62, and if they bet it hard and they give it out or something, it goes to 68, and that's information that you just got that they like them all. But sometimes you disagree with that information. You know why the line moved. You could play it the other way. It's kind of it's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any early Super Bowl props that you bet and might be willing to share with us?
Yeah, I was pretty big on the Mahomes overs. I played him in the mid 280s over pass yards. I'm pretty sure the lines have moved to like the high 280s right now. Still a little bit of meat left on the bone, in my opinion. A lot of that was based off, Mahomes is getting priced as if he's still not healthy. And listen, he's still not 100% healthy. I can see that. But I think in 2 weeks, he's going to be pretty close to it. And then another reason that the line is lower than what it's been, because let's face it, like against Jacksonville in their first playoff game, his prop number was 310 on pass yards. And like against the Raiders, it was 320 that week. So like we're accustomed to Mahomes being in the low 300s typically on his passing yardage number. One of the big reasons that it's a lot lower is the Eagles' pass defensive metrics really good, and especially like on yards per game that they're giving up. It's been really low, but you got to remember the Eagles have had one of the easiest schedules that defenses have that a team could face all year, and one of the easiest schedules of opposing quarterbacks. And if you look, like when the Eagles did get tested against teams that were just top 16 offenses, their EPA per play went to 20th. Their play success rate went to 27th. Points per game, they allowed 30 points per game. Now, that's a short sample size. Do I think the Eagles have an above average solid defense? Of course I do. They got talent. But I do think that Mahomes is semi matchup proof, where unless you see a situation like the Super Bowl a few years ago where he's just missing four starting offensive linemen against the best pass rush in the league, he's typically going to get his. And I feel like that the Eagles, although they're a good defense, I don't know if they're elite enough to warrant this type of downgrade into Mahomes' projection. So, been pretty optimistic on a lot of Mahomes props this week, and didn't go crazy on this. Haven't bet it that big, but Miles Sanders, I was optimistic on some of his prop numbers. I bet him over rushing yards in the mid 50s. And that was a little bit about Kansas City really has faced a pretty easy schedule of opposing run offenses this year. They even against that schedule, they haven't fared super well. And Miles Sanders' number was kind of deflated a little bit. And the reason it's been deflated is because he hasn't gotten the usage in the two playoff games, but in the first half of those games, he has gotten the usage. It's been the second half where he hasn't. And that's been because of the big leads that Philadelphia has had, where they're up 20 points, they're going to the other running back. So, in a game that I do expect to be very close, I expect Sanders to get the usage that we've kind of been accustomed to him getting during the season. So, I thought that his number was just a tad low as well.
Excellent. You talked about Mahomes over against Cincinnati with all the injury stuff with Matt Landis last week. It made it into my newsletter. Great win there. I think it went over midway through the fourth quarter, which was pretty nice. I feel like with Jacksonville, that was probably the worst pass defense he's faced. You get a little bit of an upgrade against a Cincinnati defense that's been pretty good, but I mean, Philly's definitely going to be the best out of those three, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of respect for Cincinnati's defense as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with Philadelphia is like, yeah, I would say that they're obviously it's them and Cincinnati. You're debating on the better defense. I would take Philly's defense, but again, just how much has this schedule impacted their year-to-date metrics?
Right,
And it's funny. The last time that we got to see them against an explosive passing offense was that Dallas game where
right,
Gardner Minshew was starting, and they did give up 40 points in
right,
that game. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to say that Philadelphia, it's going to come off that I'm saying, like, oh, Philadelphia's defense isn't that good. They give up big games to good offenses and they're overrated. I'm not saying that. I respect the talent level that they do have on defense, but I don't think that their defense is. Listen, we haven't seen teams really ever slow down Mahomes,
right.
really ever, and it's going to take a special type of defense to do that to him, in my opinion. And I just don't believe that Philadelphia is that special type of defense. I believe that they're a good but not great defense.
And then with the Miles Sanders thing, I like the analysis there. I mean, he didn't get a lot of carries last time. In general, the way I feel like the Eagles can win this game is by getting up and running the ball. Because I mean, if they're down in the second half and they need to throw, that feeds into the better part of Kansas City's defense. I know their pass defense doesn't look great statistically, but you'd probably rather try to run against them. And you know, Kansas City's run defense isn't good, but it's also not as bad as it has been in past years, right? So would you kind of agree with that? Like it's I feel like it's a Super Bowl that's going to be kind of reliant on game state, right? Like the Eagles want to be up in this. I mean, you obviously always want to be up, but that's probably the better situation for them.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the fact that we don't know how fully healthy Jalen Hurts is. I mean, just off the eye test, to me, he hasn't looked amazing throwing the ball, and since he's come back from that injury, he really didn't. Well, if you look at the Week 18 game against the Giants, the divisional game, and the Niners game, I don't have his stats in front of me, but I think it's something around like 5 to 6 yards per attempt, or he had 8 yards per attempt during the season. He just, if they do get in a game script where they do have to throw from behind, I'm just not fully certain. And that's been what's kept me off betting Philadelphia. Like, in the divisional round, there was the teaser of the century that everybody was on with the Eagles and Kansas City. That's what kept me off of it, is I've just been a little worried about Hurts' shoulder, and he really hasn't done a ton to sway me the other way on that. So that's
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
been what I'm worried about with them if they do get behind.
I completely agree with that. I mean, my pass metrics don't like Philadelphia's pass offense in terms of success rate. They're kind of mediocre in success rate, and then they get a significant downgrade when you adjust for who they've had to play against. And then with Hurts, like he didn't have to do anything against the Giants because they went up however many touchdowns in the first quarter. And then against San Francisco, one thing I thought he was off on a lot of his deep throws. And I don't want to make too big a deal about like 2 or 3 throws, but he wasn't close. And one thing I track is plays of 20 yards or more, pass plays of 20 yards or more. And I mean, one of the reasons I do it is because there tends to be a pretty random element in there, and Philadelphia's been pretty good, probably better than the quality of their pass offense suggests. But what was particularly interesting about the San Francisco game is that they had one play of over 20 yards. And that one play was the pass to Devonta Smith that wasn't actually a catch, right? The one-handed catch that the Eagles were smart enough to get up and snap the ball. So if it weren't for that, they had zero pass plays of 20 or more yards. Against a good Niners defense, but yeah, they were able to run the ball, and that's how they, and the fact that they're playing a fourth string quarterback, that obviously helps as well. But yeah, definitely supporting the things you're saying. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe Jalen Hurts will come out and be great throwing the ball deep, but I think it's it's definitely valid to question what state his shoulder's in.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with all that, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if after this Super Bowl we hear something about Hurts. You always hear it after the games, like, "Oh yeah, this guy was playing hurt." I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised if we heard something like that.
Yeah, and he seems like, this is a quarterback. He's not a quarterback that has been able to kind of make it as a pocket passer, right? Like his last year in college at Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley kind of gave up on throwing the ball a lot towards the end of the season. Like they just ran Jalen Hurts a lot. So like he's a guy that's had to grind it out, use his physicality. And I think because of that attitude, right? Like he's going to play through some shoulder pain, right?
For
it's
sure.
not it's not
Yeah.
like not like one of these other guys. So awesome. So Hitman, let's move on. You are both a pro bettor, but you also sell picks on pregame. Give us a sense for why you decided to do the latter, because you probably don't need to for the money necessarily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so when I first started, I talked about earlier that I was just a forum poster, and that's kind of where I started posting and got a reputation. And when I was still a school teacher, that's when I got an offer to say, "Hey, do you want to work for us?" and everything. And at the time, I was thrilled with that. Like I never, nobody ever has a dream of being a pro bettor. Like it's not something you go to college and like I'm going to be a pro bettor or something like that. So at the time, I was like, well, this is great because I can make some money on the side from my betting. I can make some money on the side from pick selling, and I'm teaching as well. Like, it's a nice little boost to your teaching salary to add that on top of it. So I did that, and that's kind of how I made my way. I made my name, and I made my way into where people start finding out who I am. And I was a handicapper slash like pick seller before I was really a pro bettor. And that's something that just came gradually as legalization happened. I started meeting new people and all that. And it kind of just kept growing and growing and growing. So it's been the thing that I'm like, do I really want to stop doing it? I feel like, and again, there's always a negative view on it from other professionals for the most part. And it's because it's a scum filled industry. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Like 99% of people that are selling picks, everything, they're either deceiving you or they're not deceiving you, but they don't have an edge really. And any of that. And I get that. And, there are a few groups like Right Angle Sports that they're very respected. People know that they're really not deceitful at all. They know that you're going to get great closing line value. They put in the work. They tend to win more than they don't. And what I hope is that people view my service in a similar light, that they say, he never really doesn't, he never deceives anybody. His record is publicly posted. He gives out lines that are widely available and all that stuff. So, obviously I'm not in it for the money. There's the little bit of extra money, and trust me, it's not anything close to how my betting's going, but the little extra money is nice. I feel like there's a lot of people that appreciate me for it, and there's people that have been with me for years, and they'll say to me every year, like, "Oh, I can't wait to re-up," and I make money every single year. I get such good closing line value usually off of you, and all that. So there's a lot of people that have said they've had good experiences and everything. And the other thing that has helped so greatly is I know for a fact if I never started doing that, I would never be in the position that I am now as far as connections, because it kind of gave me my notoriety, my jump start. And what it ended up doing is a lot of people, every now and then you'll get people contact you. Hey, I subscribe to your picks, but I'm really looking to make this profitable. I know you win. I have these outs. Would you like to work
Right.
together as betting partners? I have other guys that have said to me, like I'd like to get some of your picks. I can help you get down on certain stuff, and that has helped absolutely immensely. And it's come from me having a reputation from starting out giving out a service. So it's helped me make a ton of connections. It I feel like it's affected most people positively. And the thing is, it's kind of a year to year proposition with me right now. And the reason is because I'm a better first and the selling comes secondary. And obviously before I bet, I have to get myself down on stuff. And sometimes lines will move before I'm able to give them out. And that's something, hey, I can't give it out. Or something, a line might move on a prop by a yard or something after I get down. But I'm like, you know what? I feel like I have a really high edge on this anyway. Even if I bet over 60 and a half, over 61 and a half is still going to be very profitable, I think, for people that subscribe to me. So, but with it getting harder to get down, it might come to a point where I have to worry about getting myself down. I can't worry about the service. Or it might come to a point, there's other services that I mentioned earlier. They give something out and the lines are moving at in 3 seconds. And especially if you're giving out props, places like DraftKings, they're limiting your clients. They're not so it's kind of something that year to year I'm evaluating at this point, and I'm not going to do it if I feel like people aren't getting their money's worth. If I feel like I'm not helping people, and what the other thing is also, Ed, is that it's a certain pressure that just makes you work harder. I feel like when I'm betting my own money, like yeah, it's a pressure, but when other people are reliant on me, whether it's betting partners or people subscribing, it's a certain pressure that I really want to win for other people as well. So I felt like that it has helped me. Like from a personal betting portfolio, it's different than winning for a service. Winning for your portfolio is 10 times easier than the service because you got to give out widely available lines compared to like a one out has a certain line. So it kind of makes you work a lot harder to beat markets that are widely available. So I felt like it has helped me a little bit, even from handicapping perspective in that. So yeah, that's kind of my view on it. And some people in the business, they're gonna have their view that no matter what you say, they're like, no, pick selling bad. You pick seller can't be an actual bettor.
Well,
He's doing it because he needs the money to sell picks or whatever. Some people are always going to say that no matter who it is. So, you kind of learn in this life. If you're in the bet, you know this. Gambling Twitter can be very toxic, and
it
a lot of
can.
people
It
are
can.
against each other.
Yeah.
So you're always going to have people that are going to say that, and you kind of just got to say, you know what? I know what my intentions are. I'm not concerned about anybody else's opinion on it.
I was going to ask you if anyone gives you crap about your pick selling, but you've already answered that question. And it's yeah. I mean, there are a lot of toxic things out there, and maybe the debate isn't so good. Maybe simply because the medium doesn't lend itself to good long form debate. But one thing I do want to point out about your answer, right? Like we all, I think if you are in business, you need to have connections, and selling picks is one way that you are developing those connections. And I mean, that's actually something I had never even thought about, but yeah, that's obviously a really important part of your work. And so in that sense, it makes ton of sense that you've done this despite all the crap that you get.
For sure. I mean, even like with some of my releases, like the market will move a little bit, and like sometimes you have groups that will reach out and say, "Hey, if you need help getting down before you give something out, I could help you get down, and I promise you, you can watch the screen, and we won't blow up the screen. We have ways not to blow up the screen and everything to that where it'll impact your clients and all that. So it's really, you know what? I wouldn't trade it. I would not trade it at all because as it's as I said, it helped so many people know who I am And with a lot of people, it can give you some instant credibility when you meet some people. Like, oh, you're Hitman. I know you have a service. Yeah, I've heard from some other people you do good things. The market respects you on some of your releases and everything. Like, yeah, we could, and you also, I know you have a reputation. We could work together. I know that you wouldn't want to do anything to damage your reputation. So, yeah, I mean, it's helped me absolutely immensely from a betting standpoint. It has helped me a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game, especially when that's the biggest part of your income. So, Hitman, I'd like to end the show with some potentially non-sports questions. What's your favorite book?
It's funny when you're asking a person that does not read that much. It's pretty sad how little that I do read. I have how little I do read books. But if I had to pick one, I enjoyed The Logic of Sports Betting. I read that, and I thought it was well written. There was some good things. So pretty much anything related to sports betting will kind of pique my interest. So that's the one I'd probably go with. I was
Nice.
the guy. I was the guy in high school that was, trying to find the spark notes on all the books that they would make me read, and in
Right.
college doing that also. So,
Awesome. Awesome. How about your best culinary experience?
oh no, that's something that I'm passionate about. A lot. My money goes to eating. I love
Awesome.
to spend for good meals, and just like hidden gems, other places that don't charge you as much, but just hidden gems. But going out to dinner is one of that's my thing. Getting not a big partier anymore since like the past 10 years, but one thing I love is going out, getting two, three cocktails, having a great meal with friends, family, all that. Chef Vola in Atlantic City is probably the top Italian. It's near the Tropicana Casino, and it's in a little house. Like if you look at it from the outside, you're like, this place is trash. Like you'd think like it's like Section 8 housing, what the house looks like. And it's like an old school Italian joint that it's been around for like 100 years. And it was actually Frank Sinatra was quoted as saying, "When I die, please bury me with a pie from Chef Vola's." So it was Frank
Wow.
Sinatra's go-to place whenever he was in Atlantic City, and they're an Italian joint. They're great. I love their Italian food. Portions are huge. Um, there's a place in Elizabeth, New Jersey, near Newark Airport, named Valencia, and it's a Portuguese steakhouse where you cook your own steak. It comes out with raw pieces of meat, and you have a little stove, and you have all your ingredients like your garlic butter and lemon and whatever, all that stuff, and you cook the steak on the table. And they also have some excellent sangria. So that's one of my go-to spots that I really like. Um, it's a really underrated place. You've obviously been in Vegas a lot. Have you ever went to Ellis Island's barbecue
Mm,
place?
no. Tell me more.
Ellis Island Barbecue. Steve Fezzik is the one that introduced me there. Ellis Island Barbecue place, and it's not the nicest casino at all, but their and it's a cheap place. It's like $15 for a full rack with like corn, garlic bread, beans, all that. So it's a real value place, and it's something like $15. And I'll tell you what, they have two things on the menu: ribs and baked chicken. And you can get the
Wow.
combo if you want, half and half. And it's a great place. And it was actually, I think Guy Fieri went to that place and like did a whole show on it or
Huh.
something. So that's a really underrated cheap barbecue spot in Vegas. So those are a
And
few of the places that I'd mention. I'm also any great steakhouse. I love. Really a fan. Have you ever been to Prime at the Bellagio, where they do it? The restaurant is you could sit outdoors and have the fountains going on off.
nice. No, no, I haven't been there.
Okay, Prime is it's the food's very good, but the scenery is very good,
Right.
especially if you're going on a date night. It's a solid place. So I could go on and on about my favorite restaurants, but that's just a few.
No, I love it. I'm taking notes here, man. Ellis Island is in New York, I presume.
No, it's actually it's off the strip, and it's
Oh, okay.
do you know where the Top Golf is?
I feel like I've seen it, but I can't.
It's it's by the Bally's. It's behind Bally's, and it's yeah, it's off the strip and behind Bally's, and really underrated spot. So I'll be going in a few weeks to Vegas, and that's always one of my go tos.
That's really awesome. I like the idea of finding like a place that a lot of people don't know about, but Guy Fieri did a thing on it. And then also like the cost is probably half of what I can get a cocktail at other places in Las Vegas for. So
Yep.
that
If
sounds,
you get a player's card at Ellis Island, then you actually get like $2 or $3 off the meal. Also,
oh, there you
it's
go.
a tremendous value at that spot.
Incredible. All right. Well, I'm definitely going to be checking that out. Hitman, last question. If you could have dinner with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Um, Probably be Billy Walters would be a good name. I mean, I've heard I've he was one of it's funny, Billy Walters, when I first started getting serious in the betting, I watched that 60 Minutes interview they did with him.
Uh-huh.
And that was like one of the first times I was like, this is so cool. Like, I want to be like this. Like, I want to have the setup where I have all these partners and and all these screens up and make a living off betting and all that. That's got to be awesome. And obviously, I'm never going to get to that level of what I'm never going to be having the private jets probably and owning the golf courses and everything. But
Well, why not? You're
yeah, I
young.
mean, I don't know. It's there's only one Billy Walters, that ever
Right.
got
That's for
to
sure.
that level. It's something you could strive to be, but I'll put the odds are against me. As confident as I am in my abilities. But yeah, I'd kind of like to pick his brain about old school Vegas and how he used to do things and all that. So that would maybe be one. And then the fun one that I would pick is I just recently really became addicted to golf over the last 3 years. And me and my one of my top partners, who I grew up with this guy, we've been friends for like 20 years, and he lives in Vegas now, and he's an avid golfer as well, and now he's betting with me and everything. And me and him are always obsessed with John Daly. We're always talking about John Daly, about just everything the guy does fascinates us. So we always say we're like, oh God, like our life dream is to get in a golf get a round in with John Daly, and just it would just be so much fun, in my opinion. Get some golf tips, watch him binge drink and smoke like 7 million cigarettes on the course, and everything. So that would be like a fun one that I would pick if I ever wanted to grab a dinner with, and I'm sure there would be hours of stories that I would get out of him. So
You are
that
the
would be two people that just thought of off the top of my head.
you are the actually the second person on this show to mention John Daly as the answer to this question. My good friend Mike Craig also said that as well. And
Wow.
I
Okay.
and I think the idea is like I don't think you want to play around a golf with him. I think you want to like be drinking at 3 a.m. in Vegas. That's
Oh,
when all the good stuff's going to come out, right? Hitting
well,
the
I
craps
mean,
tables.
you could easily have a good 4 hours of drinking on the course as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
that's true.
he's playing barefoot and everything, and I'll find a way to gamble with him. I'll get my 2.5 strokes per hole or whatever it is, and I feel like that would be like the real experience because I'm addicted to golf now, so that would kind of be the real experience in my opinion. But
Yeah. And then maybe the next time I talk to you, your favorite book will be the new Billy Walters book that I believe is coming out in August, which I am super excited to read because he must have some just unbelievable stories that he's going to tell in that book, right?
yeah, I'm sure that's going to be something that I'll be reading that. I'm like I said, I'm not haven't read many, but that'll be one that I'll get my hands on.
Yeah, I'm really hoping I can get him on this podcast because like that's like the one time you can get someone like that to show up to your little podcast when he needs to promote a book. And like, I kind of have a specific audience that would probably really enjoy it.
Yeah, it'll probably get a few more rating points than the interview with the Hitman. I'll give Walters
I don't know
credit with
about that. I don't know, man. I'm going to be emailing you the download numbers next week, man. I think this is going to be a pretty good one. Thank you so much for your time and all your insights. Please let everyone know where they can find you on the internet, buy your services, get all your free advice, and etc.
Got you. You can follow me on Twitter at Hitman428, and everything you need to know of content, any of that stuff, you'll see me on there. So at Hitman428 Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks again. This is Ed Fang, your host for the Football Analytics Show. I really hope you enjoyed that interview with Hitman as much as I did. Personally, I really enjoy talking with people for the first time. Not only do I get to ask about their stories, ask them about culinary experiences, but it's just really cool to get a different perspective. As I mentioned during the show, Hitman has been providing some of his bets into my email newsletter. I hope he will continue to do that, not only through the next couple weeks, but also through the draft and next season. If you want to get on that newsletter, it is a free service. On every Saturday, I send out 7 nuggets, which is my curated list of sports betting tips, and then also analytics. To check that out, go to thepowerrank.com. That is my site for better sports betting advice through data and analytics. Once again, that's thepowerrank.com. Also, you can support the podcast on Patreon. If you do, you get access to a patron-only episode every month. Right now, there is an episode about 30 minutes long that explains my research into how to predict interceptions. If you'd like to do this, go to patreon.com/footballanalytics. Patreon is Patreon. Football Analytics is all one word. Once again, my name is Ed Fang. I'm honored to be your host for this podcast. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.